Yeah.
So yeah, the title is building SSG around Vite ecosystem. So I'll be showing you an example of SSGs and how to build it around Vite ecosystem and how to build it without the bundlers as well. Though the talk is, though in the talk I might be talking a bit more about SSGs and I might be showing examples regarding SSGs. The things that I'm going to talk about apply to a lot of other things as well, like front-end frameworks and even the back-end frameworks as our frameworks, etc. So yeah, we'll just I don't have slides. We're going to go through code and we'll just try to tinker around things and see if they have. So I'm gonna share my screen. Um, okay, so I have my screen is visible. I am on a blank VS Code repo right now. We'll start blank. Before going into Vite and just complications of bundlers, the first thing I wanted to show is how generally the other SSGs are built outside of the JS ecosystem and just in general how the SSGs are built. So I just created an SSG.js script, which will be our SSG script, and I'll create a template. We can call this anything. Let's just call it Reactify. So we're building a language called Reactify now. And then we have SSG script. Let's decide how the Reactify is going to look. Let's try to keep it simple. So I can just have something like maybe this, and then we can do maybe 2 plus 2 and body. So yeah, this simple, we have HTML and then we have a JS expression. This doesn't exist right now, so your browser doesn't understand this code. Now we have to turn this into HTML or something that browsers understand. Let's go to ssg.js. First thing I'll do is just require fs, which is file system in Node.js. First we have to read this file. So I'll just say Reactify template equals, let me just close this, fs.read file sync, and I'll read this new file that we created and just want to read it as UTF-8. So this will give us the content of this file as a string here. What we want to do is this is the part that our browsers don't understand, so I have to compile this part somehow. I won't get into compilation right now. Let's just hack our way out of this for now. So I'll do reactify.template and just replace the thing we wrote. So we wrote 2 plus 2, right? I'll just replace it with the static 4 for now. And let's see if what this output gives us. So I'll just HTML out. Um, and if I run node SSG, now we have a code that is HTML. This is static, so I'm sure it doesn't make sense right now, but we'll fix that. Um, and yeah, one more thing we want to do is just create a HTML file. So I'll do index.html and just write the content out that we get here. So yeah, just reading the file and replacing the things that HTML doesn't understand, and yeah, writing it into HTML. So now if I do node SSG, we get this index.html, which we can just run directly on the browser. This is how generally static site generators are. They output HTML, they output CSS, JavaScript. CSS, JavaScript will be just copy paste, but they primarily focus on outputting HTML and doing this turning this Reactify template into HTML is the work of template engines. This works great. There are some issues. Actually, let's just make this a bit dynamic. This is very hacky, right? So we can do this. So I'm just writing regex that takes the brackets and the basically picks this up, a regex that picks this up, and so that we can replace it dynamically. And I can just do something like this. Um, this should also work. This will replace everything with 4 right now because the 4 is static. Replace function supports a function called replacer, which can take. first parameter to this is the entire match, and the second parameter is to this is the capture group that we capture from this regex. So, for example, in this case, we'll get 2 plus 2 in that parameter because we are capturing it with these brackets. You don't have to know all this. We'll just skim through this real quick. This might not be relevant later for the talk. Okay, I can just console log this for now so that we'll know that we are actually getting the right output here. I'll return the static file. So you can see we got 2 plus 2 here because of this. Now we have to evaluate this 2 plus 2. Normally in Node.js has a one more as a package called VM, which is the default Node.js package. You can require it from your Node.js, but we're not going to use this. This is just example, so I'm going to use eval. VM is usually safer than eval, but this is just example, so we don't really care about the security right now. Now, if I run node SSG, I get this 4. I still get this 4. I can now I can also replace this otherwise. So if I do node SSG, we get this 3, um, and we can run all sort of things like deactify dot to uppercase, and this should work as well. It worked. Yep. So we get to evaluate these things, and we get to write a code that doesn't that browsers don't understand. So this build time step, this compilation step, allows us to have more dynamic things on the build time, and this is basically what SSGs do. In this example, I'm using the replace and this eval, but normally the way other template engines would do is there, there's something called tokenizing. So we can tokenize this whole code and just say that this is the HTML part, then this is the open bracket, this is the JS part, this is the close bracket, and this is the HTML part again. And depending on these tokens, we can build a tree of this is something like it can look something like just an example. Um, it's a type HTML code body, and then inner HTML. Inner HTML can be something like let's say okay. First, we'll have a open bracket. So let's just call it subsection, and this can have type open bracket code, and basically something like this that goes on building the object that helps us go through this code, and then that AST can turn into you can evaluate. We can run this evaluate in the AST's JS output, and then we can turn this into HTML again. We didn't have to do that because the syntax is pretty simple right now. This is mostly applicable when the syntax is complicated. For example, JSX is complicated, or view templates, if you've seen, view templates are complicated. So in that case, we would normally have to build ASTs and generate code from ASTs. But yeah, this is working. Um, Now, uh, why am I suggesting to build it around Vite or any bundler, and why not this setup? The problem with this setup is, let's say, okay, this is working fine, but let's say I want to do something like um, maybe import React from React and then do maybe React dot render to string and div hello. So this is JSX. It's really hard to get this thing working with this setup because first, getting import working in this setup is extremely difficult. Node.js doesn't really support import. It supports import with type module, but that setup is really messy. I mean, they just forget that that exists. It's really difficult to get imports working. That's one. Then another problem we have is this JSX. We wrote eval here. In SSGs it will be vm dot run script, something like that. But this is just running JavaScript. So to to be able to add JSX in these sections, we'll probably have to do something like maybe get Babel core from require Babel core. Like it will be some Babel core function. I'm not sure the exact code, but then here it will go like Babel core transform and something like this. This solves for the JSX, but then you'll also have things like maybe I want to write TypeScript here. So if I do const string hello, this is again a new syntax which my code doesn't understand. Again, I'll have to write. I'll have to handle that syntax with maybe just reading TypeScript from. There must be something from TypeScript uh, that just do that does ts.compile. So if you see, every time we are adding a new syntax that is common in JS ecosystem, we have to handle that in our code base, and it just gets more and more complicated, and it's just impossible to support each and every framework that exists or each and every syntax that exists in JS ecosystem. Um, so solution to that is using a bundler, and I'll explain why using a bundler helps. Um, so we don't really need this code right now. I'll just put this here and we can move to the Vite now. I think I'll just install Vite first, and then I can explain why bundlers are important um, while trying out Vite. So I have this simple setup. I'll create a blank app here which we can use inside Vite. And if yeah, let's do this. And I'll just second. So I'm just setting up Vite now. Right. So we installed Vite, we added the scripts of Vite, and I created a index.html with this basic code, and I added a client.js which links to this blank client.js for now. I added dev script which calls Vite, which is the Vite's dev server. So let's run that. We have this running in localhost 3000. Let me just open it here. Yeah, it's blank right now because we are not really doing anything. Um, I can do something like query selector, and this should give us hi. So this is the Vite setup. You can get it with Vite init as well. I just set it up from scratch because it's not that difficult. So yeah, why bundlers help? The way bundlers currently work in JS ecosystem is bundlers allow you to have these imports like I can just import something from app.ts, let's say. App.ts doesn't exist, but I can do this. And app.ts bundlers have something called loaders. Loaders are these plugins to bundlers which can take some unknown code and turn it into JavaScript. So while using Webpack, you might have seen file loaders or SVG loaders, CSS loaders. So this is what they do when you're importing it. They take they read this file app.ts, they transform this app.ts into, let's say, JavaScript code, and then what you get in this variable is is the JavaScript code. I can actually show you an example. So this we're using Vite. So Vite by default supports JSX. So I'm going to create a file called app.jsx, and I'll just create a basic JSX syntax here. And I'll put this here. Now let's console log this and see what we're getting here. Um, so in console, you can see what we received is this react.create element calls. So when this import was happening, we took this JSX code and turned it into react.create element calls. And this is something that applies to every framework and almost every language. So for example, in case of Vue, it will be .view file, and you'll be writing Vue code here, and Vue code will be converted into some JavaScript code. Same with Svelte, you can write Svelte code here, and Svelte will be converted into some JavaScript code that is independent of any new syntax. We can actually see the Svelte code in documentation too. So I think Svelte. Svelte documentation have this where you can try out things, and they have this JS output option where you can see that what Svelte generates. So when you import something with .svelte extension, the loader for that bundler will take this Svelte code and turn it into this code, which JavaScript understands. So yeah, this is how all the frameworks sort of work. This gives us an opportunity to write any unknown syntax here, and then we can just use it in the code itself. So for example, this app.jsx, I can just call React DOM and render the app.jsx here. Okay, so this explains the JSX. Let's see how it is relevant to SSGs, or how it is relevant for us right now. Now let's create a file called, I'll again call, let's call this navbar.reactify. We've been building this reactify syntax, right? I'll write a basic syntax here. Let's do this navbar to uppercase, and I'm going to import this navbar at reactify here. Um, and we're planning to turn it into HTML, so I should be able to pass this to inner HTML, and that should work. This broke because Vite doesn't understand this syntax. We have to explain to Vite. We have to write a loader plugin that can take this syntax and turn it into HTML. So that is the part we'll get into now. So I can define vite.config.ts here, which takes define config. It's not this one. Define config Vite. So this is just a configuration setup for Vite. It takes the plugins key, and we can pass plugins here. Currently, we don't have any plugin for converting this Reactify syntax to Vite. So we're going to write that plugin now. Um, I'll go into Vite documentation, and there is a plugin section. Oh, I think this is the plugin section of, it's a list of plugins. Yep. So they have this documentation on how to build Vite plugins. We'll just go through this. We don't. There are so it provides you multiple functions like transform index HTML for transforming HTML to transforming something from HTML, or there is configure server if you want to do something on SSR plugin. But what is relevant for us right now is this transform. Let's find the documentation for the transform somewhere. Yep. Yep, this should help us. So this is a Vite plugin. It's like a basic Vite plugin right now. I can take this. Let me just write it here itself. So this is, let's call it Vite Reactify plugin. And I call this Vite plugin. And we want to pass JS here. So yep, we'll figure that out. And source map we don't need right now. What are the errors? Let me just turn this into JavaScript. I don't want to fix errors right now. It's still showing errors. Anyway, um, what we want to do is take the Reactify extension here. Okay, so let's just console log what we get here. So we created a plugin. There is a transform object, and I'm just console logging the parameters, and we have it here. If I run npm run dev, oh, it was throwing error because of this. Okay, now it should work. Um, oh wait, I still have this. Let me just remove this for now. Okay, now we have SRC, which is the first we have this ID, which is taking client.js and SRC. I can, if I create more files here, let's say hello.js and import it inside client.js. Then we have this hello.js as well. So what Vite is doing is Vite is giving us all the files that Vite knows that we're importing into Vite, so that we can do things over here, so that we can transform it into JS basically. Okay, going back to this, I'll comment this. Here, if you see, we are also getting this SRC of Reactify, and we are getting the ID. And later it is failing because we are not really transforming it into JavaScript right now. If I just, so I know that the ID value is going to end with Reactify. So I'll just say ID dot ends with dot Reactify, and we'll return code. Let's just return something static for now. So I just return hello, and we have this running right now. Also, if I since we are doing inner HTML here, the what we returned from the transform, we can get it over here. So I can also make changes. Okay, so the changes won't reflect because we are not really reading this. So this is static hello export, but what we want to do is actually read this code and turn it into HTML, and then basically export the HTML from here. So I'll do that. Um, we know that SRC has the complete source code of the file. So what we'll do is we'll take SRC has the source code. So I'm just going to have JS out here, and I'll take SRC, replace it with let's just do static things again. It's this part. So this will give us some static HTML. But what we want is, so this is the HTML output actually. What we want is JavaScript output. For that, we can just do something like this. It's still working. Uh, Now we want to turn this into JavaScript somehow. Let's look at this source code. Like in my opinion, the best uh, way to turn this into Java, the best syntax that we can have using JavaScript would be something like this. If I turn it into something like this, for example, let's just say this whole string and this particular part. This is JavaScript, right? I can, I mean, this particular brackets JavaScript can understand as well. So this should work for us for now. Normally, if you were using different brackets, you would have to replace the brackets with these ones. So let's just try to convert it into this syntax. Um, 1 second, will this work? If I just do this, I just have to make one change here. I'll have to put this um, inverted commas because we want the inverted commas here for these brackets to work. And yep, now we have this working. Let me just remove this part. So now we have this navbar working. If I go here and just change something, the Vite dev server can understand it and change it here. Um, so this is like a very basic um, loader plugin. I understand this syntax is like super basic right now. Normally you would have a more complicated syntax, but yeah, this is for demo. Now we can do a lot more things on this. Remember when we were writing this code, I explained how I'll have to do this TS compile, label, code transform, etc. for things to work. But since it's Vite, I can already. By the way, I can already import app.jsx from this, even though I don't really have any setup, because Vite in itself supports that app.jsx. I can also have a TS file. I just turn this into a TS file and something that this already works as well. So if I just do from the what's being exported a. So these things work directly with Vite because so in JS ecosystem, bundlers are like the central piece which can integrate well with other things. For example, I just showed you example of JSX, how it's Vite is just integrating with JSX, or how it is integrating with TS. Similarly, I can do Svelte, Vue, and anything, and the bundler will still support that. So when you're building a CSR framework or SSR framework or SSG framework, building it top of bundlers just gives you this ability that you don't have to write a lot of code to support integration with other frameworks or integration with other tools in JS ecosystem. Since a bundler is your core piece, the bundler itself can integrate with other things, and you don't have to do much. Um, Now, one thing that is missing currently in our example is I showed you how to import things here with app or here with hello. But I think earlier I mentioned how it's difficult to write imports here, right? I mean, how difficult it is to write some imports here because Node.js is really complicated with these imports. But since we're using Vite, what we can do is, so if you look at this particular code base, all we have to do is somehow return JavaScript. What if I read this part? Let me just do this. Um, It will be complicated to read it with regex right now. So, for example, I can just do something like import path from path, which is the default, which is the native node module. And after src, I think I can just print path.join hello and hi. Oops, we should do something like this actually. Wait, I'm messing up something. Wait, it's supposed to be part of src only. Let's just write this inside here. Right. Let's try to get this working. It won't work right now because we are doing this hacky thing here, right? Where we are just exporting the source with the colons attached because the earlier syntax supported that. But now we have these two things. One is this declaration, and one is this actual code. Um, so we want to turn the we want to turn our code into something like this, right? We want to turn our code into something like this, where we do first declarations, and then we export default the source code which we wrote. So this is how it should look. Again, I'm just going to do some string operations to achieve that. I can take declarations by doing src slice. So now I just know that it's starting with it's starting from the top. So I'll just slice it from 0 to last index. I can have code which just slices. Super hacky code, but let's just see if this works. Declarations and code. Um, let me just see what I'm printing here. Oh, it's adding the braces. That shouldn't be a problem though. Let me just this work with something. I should be printing this. So it's turning into, it's also adding braces. Okay, my bad, my bad. I shouldn't be adding these braces here. Just do this hacky thing again. This work? Okay, wait. Path has been externalized for browser compatibility and cannot be accessed in client code. Oops, oops, oops. Why am I doing this? We can't access path here. Let's just try to access something else. Test.txt. Okay. And let's see if we can access this. Yep, it's working now. Cool. Um, Okay, so the path didn't work because path is node native module, and we are not really doing SSG as such here. We are doing client side rendering with this inner HTML. The path would work if you're doing SSG or SSR. So there is a different setup for SSG, SSR in Vite. You can check out their SSR documentation. They have some examples on SSR and SSG. But yeah, for client, we can do this test import now, and we can just do all sort of things. For example, here we are importing this lowercase, so we can just do it all to uppercase, and this should work fine. Yep, it's working fine. So yeah, now this import is working, this is working. I can also get JSX working in this. If I if I take this source and just run ESBit transform on this, I can actually get JSX working. We won't go into that for now, but yep, but this is something that we can get working. So this completes the demo for this particular part. I'm working on something similar to this setup. Uh, Currently, it's this one was client side rendering, but the thing I'm working on, I can show you a demo. It will be a short demo, so it should end quickly. So it's called Able, and the overall setup is somewhat similar to what we saw. I can create a file called index.able here, and okay, I'll just run it through npx for now. And if I do npx.dev, let me just write something here. And this is similar to what we just worked on today. Uh, I can change and these changes apply here. I can also write something like utils yes, and this export addition function, let's say, that takes const add num1 num2 and returns the num1 plus num2. So I wrote a function that just adds two numbers. I can import that function from here with ES imports. And this works fine as well. So yeah, this is something that I'm working on. The initial setup is somewhat similar to what we saw, but yeah, there are a few other things, and this can also generate the static side for you. So if I do generate, it just builds me this final HTML which has the file in it. So yeah, you can check it out on It's the documentation is not ready yet, but you can check out its GitHub. It's slash abiljs slash abil. So, yeah, I think that's it. If you have any questions, you can ask.